Welcome back. Well, today's video we're dealing with the Australian Commission, or the offsets of it, or what's happening with the Australian Commission. Well, today Senator David Shoebridge put out the order. We're going to take a look at that. And it's almost like he questioned, they only paid out 2 claims? Out of 1,000 claims that came up on the redress, they only paid out 2, and they did very, very little. Well, it was back in 2015 that the Royal Commission got into this all, and it all got opened up. The whole world started looking at this. Now we see Norway's canceling them as a charity, or they've appealed it. We're waiting for the final results. And there's all kinds of things happening all over the world with this religion. Now, in Australia, they found that the organization handled over 1,000 cases of child sex abuse internally without reporting a single one of them to the authorities. And how did they get away with it? Well, this whole 2-witness rule that was in the old elders book regarding child sex abuse got all the elders out of hot water, because there's never ever another witness. So all of this stuff gets covered up, thrown under the carpet, and they say it's to protect Jehovah's name. And so they break all these crimes. Now, the Jehovah's Witnesses initially refused to join the National Redress Scheme, and that's to compensate these victims. So remember, the Jehovah's Witnesses sued them and said, we're not a part of this. They actually went to court, and the court finally said, yes, you are. And what's happening now? Well, since then, they're not compensating anybody. They're not helping anybody. They're not admitting that they have problems. Why does this matter? Well, if we have a religion that's willing to protect the predators over children, what else are they hiding? We're going to look at the court, what's happening in the Parliament anyways, and how they're going to push this forward to get more of the victims helped and look into this.
And to prevent and respond to child sexual abuse has a range of measures and services that are funded up until the 30th of June of this year.
Yes.
My office has been approached by people in the sector deeply uncertain about what's happening from 1 July onwards. Can you provide us what the plan is from 1 July? And if there is going to be a second action plan?
I might get my colleague, Mr. Collette, to talk to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Harvey. Thank you, Senator, for your question. We have started a range of consultations with the sector, with states and territories, with other experts working in this complex and important space with a view to developing a second action plan. Issues around funding are, of course, a matter for government when it comes to decisions and announcements, but these are issues we are working through.
Yeah, but it's the 25th of February, and the first action plan expires on the 30th of June. There's a little thing called the federal election in the middle. What about those services? What about those measures that are funded up until the 30th of June? Is there a commitment to continue the funding after the 30th of June?
Funding decisions, Senator, are a matter for government.
Well, yes, it is a matter for the government. To your knowledge, has there been any commitment to fund those services from 1 July onwards?
I'm not in a position to make any specific comments at this time.
Well, I'm not asking you to commit to the funding if it hasn't been committed to. I'm definitely not asking you to withdraw the funding. I'm just asking you whether or not you're aware if a decision has been made about the funding and whether or not those services will continue.
These are issues we're actively working on, both in providing advice to government and in consultation with the sector.
So would it be fair to say a decision hasn't yet been made, so far as you're aware, as to what will happen with that funding?
Well, decisions are a matter for government to announce.
All right. If a decision has been made, it hasn't been announced. So I want to know, has a decision been made and not announced? Is there no decision? Should these services be knocking on the doors, asking for a decision, or should they be knocking on doors, asking to be told about a decision that's already been made?
These are issues that we are working on now and are still under consideration.
Well, I'll give you one example. The Youth Law Australia's Australian Maltreatment Legal Service. It's funded under the First Action Plan. From what I can tell, it's the only legal service in Australia that operates nationally, dedicated to assisting children and young people under 25 who are experiencing all forms of maltreatment. Now, is their funding going to continue from 1 July onwards?
Senator, I can't make a further specific comment. I do note that Youth Law Australia provides an incredibly important service.
Which may end on 1 July, you see. It may end on 1 July. Will it end on 1 July because the Commonwealth withdraws the funding?
Senator, I think Mr Collett has indicated that issues around ongoing funding of the program are still under consideration. And Mr Collett and his team are working with colleagues across government on that issue.
But Secretary, you know you can't run a legal service effectively. You can't keep your key staff. You can't keep your committed, often young lawyers. If you may have to shut up shop in 2.5 months' time or 3.5 months' time because your funding's pulled. These services need this information urgently. Otherwise, they're going to be letting the solicitors go. They're going to be letting the counsellors go. They're going to be shutting down their premises. You do know that's the effect of not making an announcement in a timely manner, don't you, Secretary?
I understand the desire for certainty from the organisations that we fund. One of the significant things that happened in the National Access to Justice Partnership was the ongoing funding certainty that's been provided there. So I acknowledge that point.
Well, can you give any indication about when a decision's going to be made, either about a second action plan with funding or some other announcement about funding, continued funding for the services under the First Action Plan? Is there any time frame they can look to?
Senator, that's subject to government consideration and budget processes.
All right. Secretary, are you aware of an approach that's been made to your department by a survivor of abuse asking for a task force to look into the Jehovah's Witnesses, concerned about their continued failure to respond to child sexual abuse claims and forced labour in the organisation, and their concerns that despite notionally being part of the redress scheme, I think they've paid out on only 2 claims. Are you aware of that approach to the department?
Senator, I don't believe I'm directly, it doesn't ring a bell with me, but can I ask Mr Collett to respond?
Yeah, Senator, citizens do contact the department through the National Office for Child Safety, given its responsibilities on a range of issues that certainly go to the sorts of matters that you've just described. I can't be certain based on the comments you've made, but that would be the sort of thing that from time to time we do receive correspondence about.
Could you take it on notice? And I raise it not just because I think these matters are raised in my office, perhaps other senators as well, but it was also explicitly dealt with in the Royal Commission into institutional abuse. A series of commitments were made from the leadership of the Jehovah's Witnesses to reform the organisation's child protection policies, and the information provided to my office is that those commitments have been breached. So could I ask you to take on notice if you're aware of these concerns and what, if anything, has been done in response to them?
Yeah, certainly happy to take that on notice, Senator, and I'm conscious that while estimates occurs in the public domain, if there was specific information you wanted to provide to us, we're happy to receive that.
I understand. And my final question in this space is about AI.
It sounds like David Shoebridge is tuning up the whole Senate on the constitutional affairs to get things rolling. So it'll be interesting. We watched a little bit about it, and he's kind of cracking the whip. It seems like a lot of the staff, they kind of going, well, we don't know. We have no plan. So then he gets rolling onto the Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, what about all the commitments that the Jehovah's Witnesses made to change how they deal with children, to change their religion, to do the payouts, to apologize? What about all of that? Has any of that been dealt with? Well, Senator David Shoebridge, he wants some answers, and he wants answers, I think, fairly quick. So follow along with us, folks. We'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks, and we'll see if something starts to trickle forth and something starts to happen in Australia. So that gives you the gist of the story. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you're having any difficulties, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, ex-Jehovah's Witness, leaning on the fence there, and you need a community, we have an excellent Discord community you can join. It's in the descriptions of this video. Just link in, and there's all kinds of things happening in our Discord community. You can learn a lot about the Bible. You can learn about politics. You can learn about all kinds of other stuff. There's even a games area. They play poker. I think Ruby Quinn is on running movie night every Wednesday night. And Wednesday night here on Fixing My Faith, we have a special feature, Joe and Fran, and it's a show that lasts for sometimes 3 to 4 hours. And people come on and they talk about their experiences. You don't have to show your face, but if you can come on, it's a beautiful community. And there's a chat going on, a live community. You get to know everyone, and you no longer feel all alone. And they do live meetups. They talk about that on Wednesday nights. So please join, and we hope to see you. Until next time, keep living your life with love. It always works. Bye for now.